Before all this, I was a nursing student, third year. I wasn't top of my class, but I was steady, solid. Then my dad had a stroke. 1 minute he was cussing at a football game. The next he was curled on the carpet like a broken doll, drooling into his shirt. I dropped everything, classes, social life, my own future, to help. Mom couldn't afford to keep him in care, and the state didn't care much for people like us. Fast forward a year, and I'm working late shifts at Family Dollar on Waverly Pike, watching my mom sleep under 2 Goodwill coats in the backseat of our beat-up car. I'd shower at the YMCA, eat leftover discount snacks, and lie to everyone who asked how things were going. I learned how to fake it, smile when someone said, "Hang in there," nod when the manager joked that I was basically running the place, keep my head down when the customers got rude. Most nights were slow. After midnight, the place felt like a waiting room for ghosts. Just rows of fluorescent lights buzzing over half-stocked shelves, and me pacing the aisles like a bored mall cop. It was a Monday, October 17th. I hadn't eaten in nearly a day, and I was fighting the kind of headache that feels like someone sitting on your skull. Around 1:30 in the morning, I was restocking a bottom shelf when I saw someone, reflected in the glass of the sliding door. He didn't move, just stood there, hunched, like a shadow drawn in with permanent marker. I stood up, slow. You develop a sixth sense when you work nights, not just for danger, but for weird. Something in his posture didn't sit right. He was tall, maybe 40, wearing a navy blue hoodie pulled tight around his face. His hands were deep in his pockets. He wasn't shaking or pacing or fidgeting, just still. I didn't go to the door. I didn't want to show I was spooked. I walked behind the counter and pretended to check the cash drawer. It was full. I'd done the count at midnight. We never had more than 80 in cash, just enough for change. But that night, I'd forgotten to log a $20 return. Maybe that mattered. Maybe it didn't. The door chimed. He stepped in. His shoes made no sound on the floor. He didn't say anything, just walked slowly to aisle 6, dragging a finger along the top of the detergent bottles. I watched him disappear behind a shelf, then, suddenly, he was at the counter, dropping a bottle of dish soap in front of me. I jumped. I didn't even hear him walk up. "You, just the one item tonight?" I asked. He nodded. "Nothing else." "That'll be $2.99. His left hand pulled back his sleeve, and that's when I saw it. The second hand. It was malformed, pale like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. Not a prosthetic, not a glove. A real, shriveled, curled hand fused at the wrist, hanging like a sick branch. He caught me staring. Then he spoke. His voice didn't match his body. It was soft, young, childlike. "Do you think it hurts when 2 people try to live inside the same body?" I didn't respond. Couldn't. He smiled. It wasn't friendly. "Sometimes," he said, "one side stays awake when the other sleeps." He turned around, but walked out backwards, never taking his eyes off mine. The bell above the door chimed again. Then he was gone. I locked the door immediately. I was shaking, but I still had enough instinct to check the drawer. 2 20s were missing. I hadn't opened the till, I was sure of that. My hands hadn't left the scanner. I pulled up the security feed. I needed proof, maybe to show my manager, maybe the police, I don't know. But when I rewound the footage, I saw nothing. No man, no door opening, no transaction. Just me standing there, alone, talking to nobody. Then something strange happened. The camera showed something in my hand, a small cracked mirror. I paused the footage and stared. I hadn't touched a mirror. We didn't even sell that kind. I looked at my hands. Nothing. Suddenly the quiet in the store felt too quiet. I backed away from the screen. When my supervisor came in the morning, I didn't tell him anything. I just signed out, grabbed my jacket, and walked out to the car. Mom was still asleep in the back, bundled under 2 coats, her breath fogging up the windows. I didn't sleep that day. Couldn't. I kept seeing that second hand in the corner of my eye. Kept hearing the drawer beep like someone was still there. A week passed. I tried to shake it off. Told myself I was overtired, stressed, delusional. But I started noticing things. Mirrors felt off. Not haunted or magical, just wrong. Sometimes I'd glance at myself brushing my teeth in the gas station bathroom and think my reflection was too still, like it forgot to blink. One night I walked into work and saw the dish soap bottle sitting by itself on the counter. No receipt, no code in the system. Just sitting there. I didn't touch it. Later that week, corporate came for the quarterly audit. They flagged a time-stamped drawer discrepancy. 2 20s missing on the same night I saw him. They asked why I scanned a purchase at 1:43 a.m. with no matching footage. Then one of them showed me a printed still from the security feed. I was standing at the register, but behind me, in the reflective freezer door, was someone else. It was me, only smiling. I quit the next day. Didn't give notice. Didn't care. We packed up the car and drove as far as $40 of gas could take us. Some small town with a vacant lot and a diner that didn't ask questions. But the thing about trauma, you can't outrun it. You carry it like a passenger. I'd see him sometimes in my dreams. Not the man, but me, standing behind myself, watching, waiting. I started sleeping with the rearview mirror covered, just in case. Sometimes I wonder if that night was real, if he was real. But I know what I saw, and I know how it felt. Like I was split in two, and only one side walked away. Sometimes the scariest things don't come from outside. They come from within, from the pressure of holding everything together when your world is falling apart. The mind, when stretched too thin by trauma, poverty, and loneliness, starts to crack in places we don't even see, until something stares back from the other side of the mirror. Even in the quietest moments, your reflection is always watching. The question is, which version of you is really in control? People say retail is easy work. They say it like clocking in to fold disheveled sweatpants for 10 hours straight while being screamed at by someone over expired coupons is supposed to be a break from real life. Let me tell you something. It's not easy. But for a guy like me, it's what kept me upright. I wasn't planning to spend my 30s as an assistant manager at a Family Dollar in Lafayette, Louisiana. But life doesn't exactly hand out trophies for plans. My wife left me last year. Took our daughter, Kaylee, and moved 3 states over. Said I was emotionally unavailable and buried in my own self-pity. I won't lie. She wasn't wrong. I let things fall apart slowly, the way most men do when they're afraid to admit they're broken. I spent a lot of nights trying to drink away the silence in my apartment, but work gave me something routine. A list of things to do, names to answer to, boxes to check. Even if nobody really noticed me here, I noticed myself, and after months of hollowing out, that counted for something. It was a Thursday night in early March, cold for Louisiana. The rush had died down around 7. I'd just finished organizing soup cans near aisle 2 when I noticed her. A little girl, maybe 6, 7 years old, pink jacket, sequined shoes, holding a rabbit plushie the way kids hold stuffed animals when they're scared to put them down, like letting go would make them vanish. Her hair was in 2 uneven ponytails, and she walked like she'd done it all before, aisle by aisle, like she knew the layout better than I did. But she was alone. "Hey there, sweetie," I said, standing up and brushing off my pants. "Someone?" "Are you here with—" She didn't say anything, just kept walking toward the back of the store, her eyes never quite meeting mine. Now, this isn't a big store. You can see all the way to the back from the register, so it didn't take long for me to realize there were no adults with her, no cars pulling in outside, no mom yelling, "Come back here," or digging through her purse at the checkout. Just the girl, wandering like she was looking for something that didn't exist. I went to the front, scanned the lot. Nothing but a rusty old truck parked across the street. Then I made an announcement on the intercom, calm but clear. "Attention shoppers. If anyone's missing a child wearing a pink jacket, please come to the front register." I waited. Nothing. She didn't speak, didn't cry, just kept walking. Over and over again, down aisle 9. Something in my chest tightened. I called the police. When you work in retail long enough, you learn not to panic. Most of the time, the weird stuff works itself out. A kid wandering off, a drunk stumbling in, a domestic argument by the freezers. It's all part of the late shift bingo card. But this didn't feel normal. The dispatcher on the phone was kind, but you could hear the disbelief. I tried to explain. I told them the girl walked in alone, and I didn't know where she came from. Said she hadn't said a word in 15 minutes. Not a sound. I hung up and turned back toward aisle 9. She wasn't there. I checked the back. Storage room, employee restroom behind the end caps. Nothing. I ran through the aisles like a madman. I even checked the dumpster behind the store. Gone. That's when the front door chimed again. A woman walked in. Mid-30s, damp hair clinging to her neck, eyes sunken like she hadn't slept in days. She moved like she'd just woken from a deep sleep and hadn't found her body yet. "You called about my daughter?" she asked. I blinked. "Yeah. Where is she now?" The woman looked confused. She scanned the store like she was just realizing where she was. "She was in the car," she whispered. "I swear, I just ran in for a second." Then she bolted out the door. I followed. The truck across the street, that same rusty one with the fogged-up windows, now empty. No girl, no rabbit, just 2 cracked booster seats in the back and a cup of fast food soda turning to slush in the front. The woman screamed, fell to her knees like her whole body gave out. And I just stood there, frozen. Cops came 5 minutes later. I gave them my statement, told them everything, the jacket, the toy, the silence. They asked about cameras. I nodded, feeling the cold sweat cling to my back. We reviewed the footage, and that's when the real nightmare started. She wasn't there. No girl entered the building. No one walked through the front door between 6:45 and 7:20 p.m., just me. There I was on screen, restocking soup, checking the aisle, talking to no one, smiling nervously, even paging the intercom. To empty air. But then they paused the feed. Froze a frame. It was when the cops brought the mother in, and she was walking toward me. Behind me, in the glass reflection of the door, was a child-sized shape. Pink jacket, rabbit plush, smiling. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even go home. I just sat in my car in the Family Dollar parking lot with the engine off and the window cracked, replaying the moment when the cops showed me the footage. There she was, or wasn't, depending on where you looked. In person, I swore on everything I had that I spoke to a child in a pink jacket. But on the camera, it was like I was in my own play, acting out a scene for an invisible audience. Except, she was there, in the reflection. That detail kept clawing at my brain. If she wasn't real, then why would the reflection lie? The cops didn't have answers. They logged it as a potential mental health concern and a missing child call. A report was filed. The mother was interviewed again. I didn't see her after that night. Never even got her name. By sunrise, I finally went home. My apartment was quiet and cold. There were still fingerprints on the fridge from the last time Kaylee visited. That was 9 months ago. I hadn't wiped them off. Couldn't. I called out of work that day, said I was sick. My manager didn't ask for details. By nightfall, I did something I hadn't done since the divorce. I took out the old storage bin from under my bed. The one full of drawings, birthday cards, and cheap plastic toys my daughter had outgrown but insisted I keep. At the bottom, I found something I forgot I had. A photo of Kaylee, age 6, on her first day of school. Pink jacket, ponytails a little uneven, clutching her stuffed bunny. I dropped it. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't hold the picture anymore. I sat down on the floor, clutching my knees like a scared child. No, it wasn't the same jacket. Not exactly. Kaylee's was brighter, with hearts stitched on the sleeves. But the rabbit was close. Too close. That night, I dreamed of aisle 9. I was standing at the end of it watching the girl move silently, her shoes lighting up with every step, her face turned away. I tried to call her name. Not her name, just something. But my mouth wouldn't move. And in the dream, I wasn't alone. There was something behind me, breathing down my neck. I woke up choking on air. 2 nights later, I returned to work. I told myself it was just a weird coincidence, that maybe I'd seen someone outside and confused it with a memory. Maybe the mother had a child in the truck who never left it. Maybe my brain connected dots that weren't really there. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. Something had shifted. Something inside me remembered what the cameras didn't. Around 6:30 p.m., I was working the register. It was quiet. No foot traffic, just the hum of the cooler in the back and the sound of some old country song on the radio that I didn't know the name of. Then I heard the beep. The register beeped once, like a scan, but I hadn't scanned anything. I looked down. The screen was blank. Nothing had been rung up. I looked around the store. No one. I walked out from behind the counter, trying to stay calm. "Hello?" I called. No answer. I went to aisle 9. It was empty, but the bunny was there, sitting on the bottom shelf. No tag, no barcode, just resting there, like someone had left it. My throat went dry. I picked it up slowly. It was old, worn, not one of our toys, not one of ours at all. I brought it to the counter and checked the inventory list. Nothing matching. I asked my manager the next morning if we ever stocked plush rabbits with gray stitching and button eyes. She said no. Never had. I didn't tell her what I found. I just took it home. That night I left it on my kitchen table, and every hour or so I swore I could hear the register beep again. Not from the store, but from inside my apartment. I checked the door. Locked. Windows secure. No one there. But when I walked back into the kitchen, the bunny had moved. It was now sitting upright in the chair, facing me. I didn't go into work the next day. I told myself I was just tired, but that was a lie. The truth was I was afraid of the store, of what I'd find in the security footage, of who might be standing just behind me in a reflection again. And most of all, I was afraid that I wasn't losing my mind. I was afraid I was remembering something I hadn't ever dealt with. The bunny sat on my table all morning. I kept glancing over at it like it might move again. It never did. But that was almost worse. That kind of silence hangs in the air like a question mark. I finally broke around noon and drove to my ex-wife's place, the one she rented after she moved to Baton Rouge with Kaylee. She wasn't home, but her neighbor recognized me. She said Kaylee was doing fine. School, dance class. Big reader, that one, the neighbor said. Like her dad, huh? I nodded and tried to smile. But the truth is, I hadn't seen her in 6 months. The last visit was awkward. She'd gotten taller. I hadn't. I left without knocking. The next night, I did something I never do. I closed the store alone. My manager had gone home sick, and I didn't trust the new hire to lock up properly. It was quiet again, the same bone-deep quiet I remembered from the night the girl first walked in. Everything felt heavier after dark, like the air thickened once the sun dropped. I did my rounds, swept the floors, double-checked the cash drawer. Nothing strange, until I saw the jacket. Pink, small, folded neatly on the end of aisle 9. No child. No bunny this time, just the jacket. And something in me just cracked. I didn't call the police. I didn't grab my phone. I just walked up to it and knelt down, my fingers trembling as I touched the sleeve. It was warm, like someone had just taken it off. I picked it up slowly and held it to my chest. I stood there for a long while. Could have been 5 minutes. Could have been 50. Then I heard the register beep again, but I didn't run this time. I walked calmly to the front of the store and looked at the screen. It read, "Item scanned, 0 pause." Then it beeped again. The drawer slid open, slow and quiet. Inside were 2 quarters. That's it. 2 old, tarnished quarters. And in the corner of the drawer, a sticky note. Found her. I don't remember walking to my car. I don't remember driving home. I only remember waking up at 3 a.m. in my living room chair, still holding the pink jacket. The next day I called my ex. I asked to see Kaylee. She hesitated, said she had school, dance, plans. I asked again. I told her I needed it. She finally agreed. That weekend, we met at a park halfway between our towns. I brought the jacket. Kaylee ran up to me, grinning wide, threw her arms around my waist and squeezed. "Hey, Daddy," she said. "You look different." "Different how?" "I don't know." She shrugged. "Like you're really here now." I held her for a while, and for the first time in years I didn't want to let go. We sat on the bench eating gas station donuts and laughing about something dumb. I gave her the jacket, not because I thought it was hers, but because it felt like it belonged with her. She looked it over, then smiled. "It's not mine," she said, "but it feels like a friend's." And maybe it was. Sometimes the ghosts we see aren't haunting us. They're reminding us of who we were too afraid to be. I don't know what really happened in that store. I don't know if there was a girl, or if she was some shape my grief took on to get my attention. But what I do know is this. After that night, I stopped going through the motions. I started living again. I made the calls I'd put off, visited when it was inconvenient, showed up without being asked. The girl in the pink jacket, whoever or whatever she was, didn't take anything from me. She gave something back. She made me remember how it feels to matter again, even if just for one small silent customer on one quiet night in aisle 9. Silence used to feel like a burden. In college, every empty moment echoed with anxiety. So many deadlines, so much breathing space to overthink. But after my breakdown during finals, I stayed holed up in my dorm room for 3 days. I realized noise could be worse. Too many voices, expectations, small talk. I craved quiet more than anything. When I dropped out, I moved back to Billings, Montana, home with my grandfather. He's gentle, kind, but he's from a generation where mental health struggles were swept under the rug. It's why I grabbed the night shift at Family Dollar. A steady paycheck, manageable schedule, minimal interaction. I favored the closing shift. Mostly silence, predictable rhythm, no pressure to be social. The regulars were quiet too. One of them was Mr. James, mid-50s, wore a gray wool coat year-row, round, clean shoes, always the same items, canned soup, a crossword puzzle book, sometimes gum. He came in 3 times weekly around closing, nodded, paid with cash, no small talk. I found his routine oddly comforting. Then, one snowy Thursday evening in January 14th, the pattern shifted. He showed up early, at 8:30 p.m., which threw me off. Instead of heading to soup, he paused at the Valentine's rack, lingering by pink socks with hearts. I was at the register scanning bubblegum packs when I offered my usual greeting. "Evening, Mr. James." He didn't respond, just stared at the socks, then turned to me and asked softly, "You have any allergies?" I blinked. What? "To flowers," he clarified. "Lilies. Some people react badly." I shook my head uncertainly. "Not that I know of." He nodded as if filing away some memory, then left without saying a word. I brushed it off. Maybe he felt nostalgic. Maybe those socks reminded him of someone. Silly. Then on Friday I found it. An envelope taped beneath the counter ledge just out of sight. My name handwritten on it, shaky cursive. I hesitated, then opened it. A photo of me leaving the store through the back door the night before. The timestamp was faint but visible. I didn't know when it was taken. The scariest part, I hadn't known anyone was out there. On the back, someone had written, "You look safest in silence." My stomach clenched. There are no cameras back there. I prided myself on noticing everything. I checked. Who took that? When? I froze. Couldn't eat. Couldn't move for a while. I slid the envelope back under the counter, taped it deeper so nobody would find it. I didn't report it. I didn't want to be that girl again. Dramatic, paranoid, fragile. Then Saturday morning I came in early to sort inventory. Near the employee lockers, tucked by the wall, was a small bouquet of lilies. No note, no identification, just white petals curled against the cellophane wrapper, silent. I backed off, heart racing. Who would leave lilies for me? Why lilies, after his question? I didn't report that either. I left them there overnight, then moved them outside before opening. Went home pretending everything was fine. But that night, Sunday, I found Mr. James again, quiet as a shadow, just standing by the doorway in his wool coat. No items, no greeting. I froze, voice trembling. "Someone left me a photo," I said bluntly, "under the counter. Do you know anything?" He looked at me and smiled for the first time, warm, sad. "I didn't think you'd remember me," he said. "At college, library desk. I asked where the poetry section was. You helped, no one ever helped." I stared, my voice stuck in my throat. You came to college?" He nodded. I waited. He paused. "You were quiet. I liked that." My chest tightened. "That was years ago." He shrugged. I waited. Then he turned and walked out without buying a thing. I thumb-locked the door behind him. The bell still chimed as he left. I called the police that night. Told them about the photo, the flowers, and Mr. James. They reviewed the footage. He was never in the store. I had been alone the whole time, talking to nothing. When I came in the next morning, taped to my locker was one final note. "Don't worry, I'm always nearby. I only visit at night now, just like you." It was unsigned. After the locker note, I stopped sleeping well. I kept my bedroom light on, kept the blinds closed. I started watching people closer at the store, especially anyone I didn't recognize. I wasn't scared exactly, not in the monster under the bed way. It was worse. It felt personal, like someone had cracked into a memory I'd buried and used it to crawl closer. I tried to remember him. The library desk, poetry section. Did that really happen? The truth? It probably did. I worked part-time at the college library during my sophomore year. We had students, professors, and walk-ins from the town, all kinds of people. I had a habit of being overly polite back then, rehearsed smiles, a soft voice. I made an effort, maybe too much. I was trying to make myself useful, to matter. Maybe I helped him find a book. Maybe I said thank you. But that doesn't give someone the right to follow you, watch you, pretend they know you. I wanted to go to the police again, but what would I say? That a man possibly imagined a connection with me? That he left me lilies and a photo and vanished like a ghost? There wasn't even a record of him on security footage. Nothing to investigate. So instead, I started closing early. 10 minutes before we technically shut the doors, I'd lock up and turn off the lights. If anyone asked, I blamed short staffing. No one cared. One night around 8:45, I walked to the back door to take the trash out. My pocket box cutter was clutched tightly in my hoodie sleeve. The alley behind the store was dim, snow piled against the wall. I stayed alert, stepped softly. When I opened the dumpster lid, I saw it there, resting on the trash bags like a gift placed carefully. A copy of Leaves of Grass, water damaged but intact. I didn't touch it. I just stared at it, my heart thudding in my ears. When I got back inside, I bolted the back door shut and texted my shift supervisor, said I was sick, left early. That night, I stood in my bathroom mirror, staring at myself for a long time. My face looked pale, tired. I didn't recognize the woman staring back. I whispered softly to my reflection, "You were kind once, but kindness isn't always safe. I decided to visit the campus library the following day. I hadn't stepped foot on university grounds since the breakdown. Just walking past the parking structure made my palms sweat. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Validation, closure? A real name for the man who called himself Mr. James? The woman at the desk was younger than me, maybe a freshman. She looked bored. I asked if there was an archive of old library visitor logs, especially community users from around 2019 or 2020. She gave me a blank look and pointed me to the circulation desk supervisor. The supervisor was kinder. She remembered me, vaguely. Ava, right? The quiet one with the short hair. You worked Fridays and Tuesdays. You were always early. I smiled, hollow. About poetry? Do you remember a man, mid-50s, wore a coat all the time, came in to ask? She frowned, tapping a pencil on the counter. Walk-ins use our poetry collection. Why? That doesn't really narrow it down. A lot of, I think he remembered me, I said. I think he's been watching me. Her face shifted, not into fear, but concern, like she didn't want to say the next thing. There was someone, she said slowly. He didn't give a real name. We started calling him Mr. Whitman because he'd always quote Whitman lines under his breath. He'd linger in the aisles, but he wasn't disruptive, just odd. Always sat in the same corner chair near the back of the poetry stacks. I think campus security asked him to leave once. Too many complaints. My throat tightened. Do you know what happened to him? She shook her head. Again. He just stopped showing up. One day, he was gone. Never signed in. That evening, when I got home, I couldn't go inside. I sat in my car in front of the house, watching my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't move for nearly an hour. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt small. I was starting to understand that maybe he hadn't just imagined a connection. Maybe he'd built a whole version of me in his head. And maybe I'd accidentally given him the blueprint. I didn't go back to work right away. I told my manager I needed a break. Stress, family stuff, whatever excuse she'd accept without asking follow-ups. I didn't leave the house for days, except to walk the perimeter every night with a flashlight, like that would make me feel more in control. It didn't. Nothing did. One night around 2 a.m., I woke up to what I thought was someone knocking. Soft, deliberate taps, like they didn't want to be heard by anyone but me. I grabbed the flashlight and a baseball bat my grandpa kept under the bed. Creaked open the front door. No one there. But sitting on the porch, directly in the center, was a folded sheet of lined paper. My name was written on the outside. Inside, "Thank you for seeing me. That was the last time." That was it. No signature, no photo, no weird quotes. I should have felt relief, closure maybe, but it didn't feel final. It felt like a shift, like a door had closed but a window somewhere behind me stayed open. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I just sat by the window watching the streetlights flicker in the snow, wondering if I'd imagined the whole thing. The next week I went back to work. Everything felt dimmer. I couldn't quite explain it. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder than usual, and every cough or shuffle from the back of the store made my skin crawl. But the real change was me. I'd stopped zoning out. I noticed everything now. Who parked where? Who lingered too long by the shampoo aisle? Whose hands trembled when they handed over cash? A man came in on a Monday night around 8:50, wore a wool coat, walked slow. My breath hitched, just for a second. But it wasn't him. He was younger, nervous. Asked for help finding toothpaste. I walked him to the aisle, pointed it out, then stood there for a moment after he left. My reflection in the freezer door staring back at me, silent as always. Something in me had changed, whether I wanted it to or not. There's a kind of loneliness no one warns you about, the kind that creeps in when someone else decides to see you in a way you never asked for. And even after they're gone, their eyes still feel like they're on your back. But over time, the fear became something else. Not acceptance, not forgiveness, just awareness. A new kind of silence, one I could live with. Eventually, the night shifts didn't scare me anymore. The shadows didn't stretch as long, but I still kept that box cutter in my pocket. Not because I expected him back, but because some ghosts don't leave. They just stop knocking. Kindness is a powerful force, but it's not always without consequences. Ava's story is a quiet reminder that being seen, even in the smallest ways, can leave lasting impressions on others, for better or worse. Some people carry that moment like a lifeline. Others reshape it into obsession. In a world that often rewards disconnection, Eva chose empathy. But empathy without boundaries can invite shadows in. And once they're inside, it's harder than you'd think to shut the door again. So be kind, but be careful. Because attention, even unspoken, can become a mirror, one that reflects more than just your own image. Grief changes a man in ways no one talks about. Not the crying in the shower kind, not the sad songs and empty frames. I mean the quiet rot, the parts that hollow out behind your ribs and make you forget what life felt like before everything burned down. 8 months ago, I lost her. Camille. She died in a fire that should have taken both of us, but didn't. And no, I'm not some tragic hero who clawed his way out to go get help. I ran. I froze. I lived. And I've hated myself every morning since. I moved to Macon, Georgia because it was nowhere. I didn't want faces that knew me, or people who asked, "How are you holding up?" Like they wanted the short version. I wanted to disappear into a routine, something dry and dead and safe. Family Dollar on Maple Bluff had a now hiring sign. I walked in, didn't say much, got hired for shifts nobody wanted, closing, stocking, inventory. I liked it. The fluorescent lights, the hum of the AC unit, the plasticky smell of cheap merchandise. Nobody expected much. Nobody knew my name after 5 weeks. Just, "Hey boss," or "Marcus, can you unlock the back?" That's all I needed. The day it started was hot, sticky, and gray, like the sky couldn't decide whether to rain or burst into flames. August in Georgia. I remember wiping the sweat from my neck with the sleeve of my hoodie, the same one I wore the night she died. I couldn't let it go. It still smelled faintly of smoke even after all these washes. I was pulling a double, not by choice, but because Maddie called out with a migraine. I didn't mind. A quiet store was my kind of company. Around 6:50, I did my routine check. Front locked, aisles clean, back room stocked, door locked. I always double-locked it. Always. That room creeped me out from the beginning. Too quiet. Too windowless. It was like the place swallowed sound. Around 8:30, I was mopping the drink spill near the coolers when I glanced toward the hallway that led to the back. The door was open. Just slightly. Not wide. Just off. And I knew. Absolutely knew. I had locked it. I set the mop down. The store was dead quiet. No customers. No employees. I wiped my palms on my jeans and walked slowly toward the hallway. It smelled different, staler, heavier, like wet drywall and dust. I flicked the overhead light on, but it barely helped. The cheap bulbs buzzed, dim and tired. I said, "Hey, store closes in 30, employees only back there." No answer, no sound. I pushed the door open, half expecting a raccoon or maybe a late vendor. But the room was empty, except for a note, folded neatly and placed right on top of that day's shipment log. I didn't want to pick it up. Something in my stomach was already twisting. But I did. It said, "You said you'd keep me safe. Why did you leave me behind?" The handwriting, it was hers. I stared at it for too long, blinking like that would make the ink change. Like maybe I was hallucinating. But no, it was her. The curve of the letters, the way she always dotted her I halfway between the line. I shoved the note in my hoodie pocket, locked the back room tight. and told myself it was a coincidence, a mistake, some sick prank. No one here knew me. No one here could know me. Except the log it was sitting on. It had today's date. The rest of the shift dragged like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Every creak in the ceiling tiles made me twitch. Every pop of the old fridge compressor sounded like a whisper. By 9:10 p.m., the store was quiet. Front lights dimmed, only emergency strips glowing in that low amber way that makes everything feel like a hospital. I was finishing the register closeout when I heard it. Knock, 3 of them. Slow, heavy, coming from the backroom door. I froze. My hands were still on the cash drawer. I looked up at the mirror above the register, like it could somehow reflect down the hallway. It didn't. I said aloud, "Whoever that is, this ain't funny. Store's closed." Nothing. The knock didn't repeat, but something scraped. A long, dragging sound like someone sliding a shoe across linoleum. I grabbed the mop handle again, dumb as it sounds, and moved slowly down the hallway. The door was closed this time. Shut tight. I gripped the handle. Last warning. You better not make me call the cops. Still nothing. I yanked the door open. Nobody. But the dust on the backroom floor told a different story. There was a clear shape there, like someone had been lying down. Arms at their side, feet pointed out, like a chalk outline without the chalk. And then my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. Just one line. "You didn't even come back for my body." My heart stopped. Literally. I stood there, phone in hand, jaw clenched, willing myself not to scream. The thing about guilt is, it never lets go. I told the fire department I had tried to find her. I told everyone I ran for help. Truth is, I heard her screaming my name and I ran the other way. And now? She knew. The lights cut out all at once. Not a flicker. Just gone. Darkness swallowed the entire store, except for the red exit sign over the front. And in the dark I heard it. Footsteps. Bare, soft, close. Not walking, not running. Just approaching, and then a whisper. So low it sounded like it came from inside my own head. "Stay with me this time." I didn't wait. I dropped the mop handle, sprinted down the hallway, slammed open the front doors, and didn't stop running until I hit the end of the block. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, because there was no way I was going back to the apartment, and just stared at the wall like it might blink back at me. My phone was on the nightstand. I turned it off after the 3rd time it lit up with no caller ID, no voicemail, no texts. Just the silence between rings and that small, choking fear that if I answered, I'd hear her voice. I knew what people would say. Trauma, grief, hallucinations. That what I saw, or thought I saw, was my mind's way of punishing me for what I did, or didn't do. But I know what I saw, and I know that note was real. It was still in my hoodie pocket, the ink slightly smeared from where my fingers had pressed into the fold. I didn't go in to work the next day. Didn't call either. I just didn't go. It wasn't until almost noon that I got a text from Martin, the daytime assistant manager. "Hey man, you good? Store was weird when I got in. Call me." I didn't respond. But 10 minutes later, he sent another. "Did you leave a pair of burned shoes in the back room? There's this weird ash writing on the wall. Cops came and took pics. Said there wasn't any forced entry." Burned shoes, writing, ashes. I couldn't breathe for a full minute. I remembered those shoes. Camille had this pair of white ballet flats she wore until they were practically gray. One of them had a little burn mark on the heel where she accidentally backed up into a campfire once. She laughed about it for days. Called them her scar shoes. I had to see for myself. By nightfall, I found myself parked outside the store again. I knew it was insane. I could have just kept driving, started over somewhere else again. God knows I'd done it before. But the thing about guilt is that it doesn't stay buried. It scratches at the coffin lid until you hear it in your sleep. So I waited until after closing. Martin left around 9:30. I watched from across the street. He turned out the front lights, locked the door, and drove off in his old Nissan with the busted muffler. After the taillights disappeared, I crossed the street. The moment I stepped onto the sidewalk, the air shifted. Heavy again, like the heat had teeth. I didn't have keys anymore, but the side delivery door was propped open with a wedge. Probably some lazy vendor or stock boy earlier in the day. I slipped inside and closed it behind me. The store was dark. Not unlit. Dark. As in the kind that feels full. I moved down the aisle with my phone flashlight, the shelves casting long shadows like hands stretching. The silence felt alive, buzzing in my ears. I reached the backroom hallway. The door was wide open now. That's when I saw the writing. It was on the back wall, above the old wire rack where we kept overstock light bulbs and mop heads. Written in a black flaking substance that could have only been ash, it said, "He promised he'd wait." Beneath it, perfectly lined up, were Camille's shoes. Half burned, melted at the toes, singed at the soles. I staggered back. I wanted to run again, but I didn't. Not this time. I sat down on an overturned box of toilet paper packs and stared at the shoes. For the first time in 8 months, I didn't run from the memory. I let it in. The night of the fire, we'd been fighting. Something dumb. Money, maybe. Plans. I don't remember. But I do remember walking outside to cool off. She was still inside when the electrical fire started, and I didn't go back in. I told myself the smoke was too thick, that I had to get help, that she was probably already behind me. I told myself everything except the truth. I was scared. I left her behind. The note, the knocking, the text. It wasn't just guilt. It was a voice pushing me to admit what I'd buried under silence and routine. I stood up, and for the first time, I said it aloud. "I'm sorry, Cam. I didn't mean to leave you. I didn't know what to do." Silence, but the air in the room seemed to shift. Lighter. Not gone, but less suffocating. And then behind me, I heard a soft voice. "You were supposed to come back." I turned. No one. But I wasn't scared this time. "I know," I said quietly. I should have tried. There was nothing else. Just silence. Real silence. Not the buzzing, suffocating dread from before. When I stepped out into the hallway, the air was still. Normal. No whispers. No footsteps. Just the hum of the fridges and the flickering exit sign overhead. I didn't take the shoes. I left them there, like some kind of memorial. The next morning I called the district manager and quit. No explanation. He didn't ask. I don't think I was supposed to stay there any longer anyway. I left Macon 2 weeks later. Didn't pack much. Just a duffel of clothes, my wallet, and the old hoodie I'd worn too many days in a row. I'd meant to leave it behind, to finally bury it with the rest of what I couldn't carry. But in the end, I brought it with me. Not because I needed the weight, but because I'd finally stopped blaming it. Grief isn't a straight line. Nobody tells you that. It's not a ladder or a tunnel with a light at the end. Some days you breathe fine, and other days you wake up in the dark, back at the beginning. But something shifted that night in the back room. Not because I saw a ghost. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I'm not even sure anymore. What I do know is that for the first time since the fire, I stopped lying to myself. That mattered. I drove west, stayed in a small town outside Birmingham for a bit, got work painting fences and fixing porches for old folks. Quiet jobs, paid in cash, no questions. That was enough. But it wasn't over yet. A month after I left Macon, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't have answered, but that day I did. A woman's voice came through the line. "Marcus Fielding?" I hesitated. "Yeah. This is Detective Stokes. I'm calling about an incident at the Family Dollar you used to manage. You were listed as a prior employee." My chest tightened. What kind of incident? We had a break-in last night, not a theft, but the new shift manager found the back room trashed. Inventory pulled apart, lights shattered, and a wall covered in soot. There was also a note, folded, handwritten, left in the same spot you described in your original statement. I didn't say anything. She went on, cautious now. Means? It said, you weren't the only one who ran. Do you know what that I sat on the motel bed staring out at the orange sky? The sun had just dipped behind the trees. Camille used to call that burn hour, when everything looked like it was lit from inside. I said, no ma'am, I don't. She thanked me and hung up, but I couldn't stop thinking about that message. You weren't the only one who ran. Maybe it wasn't just about me. Maybe the thing that haunted that store wasn't only tied to Camille. Maybe it had more to do with the place itself, its silence, its darkness, its collection of people trying to leave something behind. People like me. Maybe Camille wasn't the only ghost in that room, or maybe, just maybe, it was her final message to let me go, telling me she understood, telling me I wasn't the only person in the world who'd made a mistake they couldn't take back. I didn't go back to Macon, but that day I took off the hoodie, folded it neatly, placed it in the donation bin outside the church by the diner. It was time. They say the past never dies, that it clings to the places we leave it. But I don't think that's quite true. I think it waits for us to face it, not to punish us, but to show us what we've been carrying, what we've refused to feel, what we must finally release. You can't change what you ran from, but you can choose whether to keep running or turn around and face it. Sometimes redemption isn't about fixing the past, it's about acknowledging it, owning it, and finally letting it rest. When you've spent years shrinking yourself to fit in, silence becomes your armor. That was me. Vanessa Cruz, 22, community college done, first real job at Family Dollar on Crenshaw BLVD. I pretended I was fine with minimal interaction. Quiet shift, grays and blues of cheap shelving, hum of fluorescent light. People hardly noticed me, and I liked it that way. The less they knew, the safer I felt. I'd spent my school years memorizing how not to draw attention. The way I walked, the pitch of my voice, even how I tucked my hair behind my ear, all of it had been mocked mercilessly. Bullies taught me early that being invisible is better than being noticed. So I came to California to be as small as possible. Thousands of faces around me. No one cared about Vanessa Cruz. On that Thursday, the sky was the same dull gray it always is in early twilight. It was around 6:25 p.m. and I was stocking Gatorade next to the freezer aisle. I was trying to ignore the dull ache behind my eyes from a headache that had started in the morning. I'd been nursing it with water and deep breaths. My focus was on lining the bottles, lightest bottles in front, heavier at the back, and adjusting labels so they faced perfectly forward. That's how I managed. I did tasks with obsessive calmness to keep the chatter in my head from finding words. Then I saw him, tall, clean-cut, standing perfectly still by the closed freezer door. His gaze was fixed straight ahead, but I felt his eyes on me, a smile on his lips. Not friendly. Too wide, too precise. He looked almost plastic, like those mannequins in mall windows. He held no cart, no basket, nothing in his hand. He just stood there. I tried to ignore him, focus on the bottles, pretend nothing was weird. 10 minutes passed. Still there. On instinct, I looked straight at him. My breath caught when he stared back, smile unchanged. He didn't shift weight. He didn't inhale or exhale. He stood like a statue. He felt like he was measuring my heartbeat. I swallowed, gathered courage. "Can I help you find something, sir?" I asked. He blinked, slowly. It wasn't natural. Then he nodded once like a machine and tilted his head, just slightly, like he was memorizing my face. I saw the name tag he wasn't wearing, the scrub top under his jacket. He had no uniform, no identity I recognized. and then I backed away. Fast. My heart pounded. I tried to steady myself. That was enough for then. He felt like wrongness incarnate, unmoored. I ducked behind the cashier kiosk and pretended to scan a DVD someone had returned. My fingers trembled. I told myself, don't panic, nobody else sees him. Maybe he left. But then a customer whispered to me at the register. The guy by the freezer, he's giving me chills, hasn't blinked in ages, isn't moving. Alarm spiked in my chest. I looked up at the monitor behind the counter. Camera 2. There he was again, still. Bigger in the tiny frame. Every 10 seconds, flick of the monitor looped static and then the image returned. He still didn't blink or breathe. He was made of stillness. My voice shook when I used the walkie. There, something's off. James, aisle 4, freezer. Could you check back? No reply at first. Then, I'm already back in the freezer aisle. I don't see anyone. Panic hit me. I leaned out to see James walking aisle 4 near the chips. He looked puzzled. I pointed to the monitor. The screen now showed the empty freezer. No visitor, no man, nothing. He checked his walkie. Camera 2 isn't working. That's why the feed is frozen. My hands flew to my mouth. The feed wasn't frozen before. I know what I saw. The screen flicked black, just static. I watched the camera again. There was no movement, no figure, nothing back there. My voice cracked. He waved at me. He looked at me. James frowned. Vanessa, maybe you're hallucinating? Headache? I nodded because I didn't have words. The rest of the shift passed in total dread. I watched every camera feed I could. Nothing showed him again. The freezer looked sterile. No one there. When I closed up, I didn't eat lunch, just walked to my car shaking. I told myself, maybe next day, it will be gone. A trick of the eye. But when I opened my locker that morning, I froze. On the top shelf, there was a half-melted red Gatorade bottle, liquid pooled inside, labeled damp with condensation. Written in black Sharpie across its label, "Thanks for looking at me." That's when I knew none of it was coincidence. The Gatorade bottle sat in my locker like an accusation. I picked it up with trembling fingers, my name written in wide block letters etched in Sharpie on the plastic. The red liquid looked like diluted blood in the bottom, streaking shadows in the fluorescent light of the locker room. I didn't sleep the night before, and I didn't sleep that night either. I took it to the bathroom and stared into the mirror, my reflection under-eyed and shaky. I tried to ask, who does this? Who waits in a store aisle, silent and still? Who writes a message on a bottle, melting something when no bulbs could heat it? My breath came ragged. I wanted to dump the bottle into the sink, but instead I just opened the window over the sink and left it perched on the sill. Next morning, the bottle was gone. I called in sick. I didn't go back that day. I didn't want to face the empty freezer aisle, the silent man who acted alive enough to wave. I didn't want James to look at me like I was losing my mind. When I finally picked up a snack in the kitchen at my apartment, I binged water and bread. Didn't prepare myself for people's questions. Instead, I went offline for hours. My texts went unanswered. I resolved never to return to the store. But 2 days later, I got a text from James. "Hey Ness, everyone's asking where you are. I keep telling them you'll be back soon. If you need a break, call me." No one's mad. It was gentle, caring. Not everyone was unkind. I realized I wanted to go back, not because I wanted to brave it, but because I had to know what was real. So I went in again that evening. I walked through the sliding glass front doors, heart pounding. James greeted me with cautious eyes. I held myself steady in the fluorescent light as we walked to the freezer aisle together. It was empty. No man, no footprints, no sign of a person ever standing there. The freezers hummed quietly. The red insulation smell scented air, not freezer burned, not strange. I pointed, showed him. He scanned, shrugged. Nothing. He flicked the light switch for camera 2. They still haven't fixed the feed. We covered with another camera. Never showed anyone there. I looked again. Still nothing. But in the corner of the aisle, faint smudges of something smeared on the tile. I knelt down carefully. I swiped with a corner of my napkin. Red smear. A smear of Gatorade. Dried. Set into the grout between tiles. James knelt beside me, his voice low. Someone pranked you with the edge of the bottle? Drew on label? No big deal. Maybe. But the static on the screen, the smiling man, the way he looked at me as though he saw everything. I stood up shaking, told James I had to go. He nodded. Take care, Ness. I left, heart pounding. But I realized something. That aisle wasn't empty once, in my mind or in reality. Something lived there. Something wanted to be seen. I didn't go back to the store for a week after that. I told James I needed time off and he didn't push. I think he thought it was stress. Or maybe he saw the fear under my skin and didn't want to ask questions he couldn't answer. But I couldn't stop thinking about the man. His smile, the static camera, the message on the Gatorade bottle, the red smear on the floor that no one else seemed to care about. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, frozen in place, but somehow aware. Like something ancient, pretending to be a person. By the 6th night, I started dreaming of the freezer aisle. In the dream, the lights buzzed overhead, but the aisle was dead silent. He stood there, perfectly still, just as before. But this time, his smile cracked open wider than a human mouth should go. And when I turned to run, I heard him say without moving his lips, "You saw me. That makes you mine." I woke up shaking. I couldn't keep pretending it didn't happen. But I didn't want to talk to my parents or friends either. They wouldn't believe me. They'd just ask if I was back on anxiety meds, or if I'd stopped sleeping again. So I decided to go back. Not to work, just to visit, on my own terms. I needed to see the freezer aisle again when I wasn't being watched. It was a Thursday, exactly 2 weeks since it happened. I waited until almost closing when the store was mostly empty. I put on my uniform hoodie, hood up, head down, and walked in pretending to shop. The lights buzzed overhead like always. A cart squeaked near the front. A couple of teens were giggling by the candy aisle. I made my way slowly to the freezers. When I turned the corner, I saw it. The man was there, just like before. Same position, same clothes, no shopping cart. Just standing, perfectly still. I stopped mid-step. Everything in my body screamed to turn around, but I couldn't move. He was staring at the glass of the freezer now, not at me. His reflection stared back at him and smiled. Then he turned his head toward me. His smile didn't change. I blinked. He was gone, vanished, no sound, no blur, just not there. Only his reflection remained for half a second longer before that too, vanished. My legs gave out. I leaned against the freezer door to catch my breath. I couldn't feel my hands. The cold of the glass seeped into my shoulder. I closed my eyes, counted to 5. When I opened them again, a red Gatorade bottle was sitting inside the freezer, right in the center. I didn't open the door, I ran. I called out of work again. I lied, said I had the flu. But the truth was, I couldn't trust what I was seeing anymore. At first I tried convincing myself it was hallucination, some kind of stress reaction. But the physical things, the bottle, the smear on the floor, the way customers also saw him that first night, it didn't add up. And I wasn't the only one rattled. On Friday, James texted again. James, "Hey, weird question. Did you leave a Gatorade in the freezer before you left the other night?" Me, "No. Why?" James, "There was one sitting dead center on the shelf, cap off, like it had been opened. Red leaked down the inside. Nobody stocked it." He included a photo. I stared at it, heart pounding. The label had no writing this time, just fogged plastic, but it was the same bottle. I knew it. Something about the way it sat there, placed, not dropped. Me, "You didn't see anyone leave it?" James, "Nope, showed up right before close. We checked the cameras again. And guess what? I didn't reply fast enough, so he sent another text. James, freezer cam was fine until 6:20 p.m., then static, whole 30 minutes gone. Again. I couldn't breathe. Me. You believe me now? He didn't respond right away. Then, James, I believe something is happening. That was all I needed to hear. The next night I came back, not to shop, not to work, to wait. I brought a notebook, a water bottle. I sat near the toy aisle where I had a view of the freezer. I stayed for over an hour. Nothing happened. No one showed. And then, right before closing, the lights dimmed for a second, just a flicker, and I heard the sound of the freezer door squeaking open. When I peeked around the corner, there was no one there, but the door was ajar, and there were bare footprints, wet, red-tinted, leading away from the freezer into the back of the store. I left without saying a word. They fired me 2 weeks later, not officially, but the schedule stopped including my name, and the calls stopped coming. I didn't protest. I didn't want to go back. But the dreams didn't stop. Always the same. Him standing by the freezer, smiling, unmoving, watching me breathe. A month passed. I changed my number, stopped responding to texts. I started going out less. Grocery deliveries only, lights on all night. Then one morning I found something on my doorstep. A Family Dollar shopping bag. Inside it, one red Gatorade bottle. No label. Just a smiley face drawn in Sharpie, wide and crooked across the plastic. I poured it down the drain. Moved a week later, and I've never told anyone outside this story. Because here's the thing. I don't know what he was. A ghost. A spirit. A leftover echo of something broken in the world. But I do know what he wanted. He wanted to be seen. And when you do see him, you can't unsee him. He follows you in reflections, in freezer doors, in shadows under fluorescent light. That's why I avoid big stores now. I never go near the freezer aisle, because some things want to be looked at. And once you give them your eyes and they don't forget, some presences feed on attention. Not everything strange demands explanation. Sometimes it demands distance. In a world full of watchers, remember this: not every gaze deserves to be returned. Long before I ended up in Tupelo, I thought I understood what fear was. But real fear doesn't come with warning signs. It doesn't yell or threaten or throw punches. It sneaks in with soft words and small silences. My ex knew how to twist my world just enough so I started to believe I was the problem. I stayed with him in Chicago far longer than I should have, convincing myself that love meant survival, and survival meant silence. It took everything in me to leave. I didn't tell a soul where I was going. I took a bus with a fake name on the ticket and only what I could carry in a duffel bag. Tupelo wasn't the plan. It was just where the driver let me off when I told him I needed anywhere quiet. He looked at me like he understood and didn't ask questions. I found a cheap weekly rental near Old Highway 25 and a job at the Family Dollar down the road. No one asked about my past. I gave them my middle name, not my first, and a P.O. box instead of an address. I figured if I kept my head down, I could fade into the routine. Unpack trucks, stock shelves, sweep floors, rinse and repeat. Cindy, the assistant manager, didn't like me from day one. I could tell from how she watched me fold receipts or reface candy bars, like she was waiting for me to slip up. I didn't take it personally. Women like her don't trust quiet women. Makes them wonder what you're hiding. That Tuesday in February, the air had a strange bite to it, like it was going to snow but didn't have the courage. I was pulling inventory from the back room when Cindy walked in with her clipboard like always. "You're training the new girl today," she said, no eye contact. "New girl?" I asked. She nodded. "Name's Danny, starts at 4. I didn't think much of it. We'd been short-staffed for weeks and it wasn't unusual for someone to last just a shift or two before ghosting. Still, I found myself feeling oddly nervous. Not scared, just tight around the edges. like something was off, but I couldn't name it yet. Danny showed up at 4:10 wearing a red windbreaker and Converse that looked too clean for a Mississippi sidewalk. She looked young, 19, maybe 20. Thin frame, brown eyes, and a polite smile that never reached her eyes. "You Danny?" I asked. "Yeah," she said quickly, brushing her hair behind her ear. Confusing. "Sorry I'm late. The bus got no worries. Let's start with the basics," I said. I kept my tone light, warm even. I remembered how it felt to start fresh, nervous, desperate to do everything right. As we walked the aisles, I showed her how to rotate canned goods and where to stock cleaning supplies. She didn't talk much, but her eyes missed nothing. She watched the way I folded boxes, how I tapped barcodes twice before stacking them. She noticed how I locked my locker even during short breaks. "You ever work retail?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, but I learned fast." Something about the way she said it made my stomach shift. Around 8 p.m., while we were straightening up the shampoo aisle, I asked, "Where are you from?" She hesitated before answering. "Out of state, moved here recently." "Same," I replied with a soft smile. "Clean slates are hard to come by." Danny let out a strange little laugh. "Yeah, fresh starts don't erase anything though, right?" My smile wavered. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I didn't. Something in her tone made my skin itch. We closed at 9. I walked back to the break room to clock out and realized something was off. My name tag, the one I'd clipped to my lanyard at the start of every shift, was gone. I checked the break table, locker, even the restroom. Nothing. And somehow, I already knew I wouldn't find it. The next morning I arrived early, hoping to find the tag somewhere near the register or maybe behind the customer service desk. Instead, I found it sitting directly on top of the punch-in machine, neatly placed, like a display. A yellow sticky note was stuck to it. Employee 1042. Status: watched. My stomach dropped. That number, 1042, was from my old job in Chicago, the one I'd had at the drugstore chain on the north side. I'd never used that number here. It wasn't written anywhere. I hadn't even said it out loud since I got on that bus out of Illinois. I peeled the sticky note off with shaking hands. Cindy walked in from the back. "You okay?" she asked, her usual bite dulled by my expression. "Did you see who left this?" I asked, holding up the note. She glanced at it. "No. Why?" "I trained that new girl yesterday. Danny. I think she left it." Cindy frowned. "What girl?" My heart thudded. "Danny. She started yesterday. You told me to train her." She blinked, then pulled her clipboard from the counter. "We haven't processed any new hires this week." I stared at her. She was here. She wore a red windbreaker, clocked in right after me. "There's no time card with that name, and no one clocked in but you." I pushed past her and went to the office. She followed, clearly annoyed now, but I didn't care. "Pull the footage," I said. She logged in, clicked a few tabs, and we sat there watching the grainy black and white video. From 3:10 p.m. to 9 p.m., I was on camera the entire time, stocking shelves, walking back and forth, alone. No Danny, no red windbreaker, just me. I felt something cold curl inside me, like ice sliding down the back of my ribs. Cindy raised an eyebrow. "You sure you're feeling okay?" I didn't answer. I grabbed my bag and walked out. The cold air slapped me as I stepped into the parking lot, but it barely registered. I passed a wooden utility pole on my way home. Something fluttered on it, paper taped to the side, the wind pulling at the corners. I stopped. It was a photo. Grainy, printed in black and white. A still frame of me standing alone in aisle 3, smiling. Across the top, written in red ink, "She finally talks to me again." That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my apartment with every light on, the photo folded and stuffed in the back of my drawer like it was radioactive. I kept staring at the edges of the room, waiting for shadows to move, waiting for the past to catch up with me. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? Someone left a photo of me that doesn't exist, featuring a girl I trained who doesn't show up on camera, using a number from a job I never listed. I'd sound like I'd cracked. And maybe I had. I hadn't been sleeping much lately. I was always on alert, looking over my shoulder. Maybe this was just trauma bubbling over in weird ways. But trauma doesn't print photos. Trauma doesn't leave notes with employee numbers only I should know. The next morning I skipped work, called in sick. Cindy sounded suspicious, but I didn't care. I walked the 5 blocks to the library and logged onto a public computer, trying to find anything about a girl named Danny matching the one I'd seen. No results. No missing persons. No new hires at any of the other Family Dollars in town. When I searched Employee 1042, a forum post from 2019 popped up on an old retail worker message board. The post was anonymous, titled, "What happens when your number starts showing up again?" It had only a few responses and was quickly archived. The original post said, "I quit my job in Michigan after someone new showed up and called me by my old employee number from Ohio. The name didn't match our roster. The cameras glitched. Then she left a note in my locker. That number was never used again and until she arrived. It was like she brought the past with her. I left town the next day. If you see red, run." No replies after that, no follow-up. I sat back, heart racing. A week ago this would have sounded like paranoid nonsense, but now? The pattern was too familiar. The red windbreaker, the missing footage, the number. Danny had brought something with her. Or maybe she was something. A message, a memory, a ghost. But I'm not the type to believe in ghosts. I believe in patterns, in people. I believe trauma doesn't vanish. It waits. It waits for quiet places, for new jobs, for shelf stocking and routine. It waits until you think you're safe, and then it knocks. By Friday, I returned to work. Nothing else had happened. No more notes, no new hires, no photos. But something had changed in me. I didn't move the same way down the aisles. I flinched when I heard the door chime. I kept my phone in my pocket at all times, even when it was against policy. Around 6 p.m., I was restocking toothpaste when I heard it, a voice, soft, just behind me. "You locked your locker again." I spun around. No one. The aisle was empty, but the air felt heavier, like breath on my neck. I stood frozen, listening. The shelves groaned faintly, as if something had moved. I walked slowly to the break room. My locker was locked, but taped to it now was a single strip of receipt paper, the kind we use at the register. Scrawled in red ink, "You used to leave it open. Before." I ripped it down and stuffed it in my apron. I told Cindy I had a migraine. She rolled her eyes but let me leave. The sidewalk outside was slick with rain. As I walked home, I passed the utility pole again. There was a new photo. It was me again, this time looking into the mirror above the employee sink. Except in the photo, I wasn't alone. Danny stood behind me, her hand almost touching my shoulder. She wasn't smiling. Neither was I. I didn't go to work the next day, or the day after. I didn't go outside at all. But on Sunday, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, then another. The third time, I answered. The voice on the other end was quiet, familiar. I couldn't place it. Then it whispered, "You locked me out." I hung up. The phone didn't ring again. That night I sat at the kitchen table and finally pulled out a box I'd buried beneath my sink. Old documents, my old employee badge from Chicago, a folded termination letter, and a photo, the last one taken of me at that job. In the photo, I was standing beside a new hire, a quiet girl, nervous, brown eyes, red windbreaker, Danny. But that couldn't be right. This photo was dated 2018. She hadn't aged a day. I dropped it on the floor, heart racing. I'd trained her before, at a different job, a different life, and I had forgotten. Or maybe I'd forced myself to forget. All this time I thought I was running from a man who hurt me. But maybe, somewhere in that broken escape, I'd locked away more than just trauma. I'd locked away memory, buried it. But memory doesn't like being buried. It wants to be acknowledged, witnessed. She wasn't real, not in the way we think of people. Danny was the version of myself I tried to erase. The girl who stood by while bad things happened, who didn't speak up, who smiled through silence. Now she was back, and she was watching. No matter how far you run, the parts of yourself you try to forget will always follow. Healing doesn't come from erasure. It comes from facing the truth, no matter how painful, and forgiving the version of you that once didn't know better. Because the past isn't a ghost, it's a mirror, and one day you have to look into it and say, I see you now. I never meant to end up in retail. Hell, 5 years ago I was tracking penetration logs for one of the biggest healthcare cybersecurity firms in the country. I was good at it, too good maybe. But when I flagged a potential breach that turned out to be internal sabotage, I blew the whistle, thought I was doing the right thing. Naive, I guess. The fallout cost me my job, my partner, my health, everything. I left the city 6 months later with nothing but a laptop and a U-Haul full of things that didn't feel like mine anymore. Landed in Rochester, where I figured I could disappear into something quiet, something that wouldn't ask too much of me. Family Dollar offered a temp inventory data analyst position. Nights only. No customers, no coworkers, just me and the numbers. I took it without hesitation. The store on Jefferson Road was functional. Retrofitted recently with a centralized system that corporate didn't fully trust yet, which is how I got the assignment. Manually cross-checking logs overnight for a week. It wasn't hard work, but it was repetitive, tiresome. And the silence, it gets to you. My shift started at 9 p.m. and ended at 6. By 1 a.m., my eyes would blur staring at inventory discrepancies between scanned SKUs and stockroom entries. To keep myself alert, I set 2 alarms on my phone every hour. 1 vibrate, 1 audio, just to break the trance of screen glow and number grids. I also started talking to myself, quietly at first, then out loud. It was less about hearing my voice and more about remembering I had one. That night, December 9th, I remember it was colder than usual. Upstate wind cut through my jacket like it was wet tissue. The back office heater barely worked, so I sat layered in a hoodie, typing gloved-fingered into a spreadsheet that wouldn't stop flagging a dozen bottles of bleach that were never scanned out. At 1:15, I left my desk to refill my coffee. The break room was maybe 20 feet away. I remember reaching for the pot and finding it cold, completely off. That was weird. I never turned it off. Unplugged, too. I assumed the janitor had done it before leaving, maybe by mistake. But when I got back to my desk, my phone was gone. Not misplaced, not buried under papers. Gone. I checked the entire office. Desk drawers, trash bins, bathroom, break room again, nothing. Then, somewhere in the belly of the store, I heard it. The faint beep of my alarm tone. A distant chirp, familiar and out of place, coming from the front, aisle 9. I should have called someone, or left, but curiosity makes you stupid. I grabbed my flashlight and walked slowly through the front aisles, my boots scuffing the waxed tile floor. The sound was clearer now, just past the laundry detergent. I turned the corner. Silence. Then footsteps. Slow. Dragging. Someone was on the other side of the shelf. I crouched, barely breathing, and peeked through the gap beneath the shelving. I saw the shoes first, scuffed Nikes, then jeans, then a hoodie. Gray. The man was just standing there face down, unmoving. He was real. He wasn't supposed to be here. I don't know how long I crouched behind that shelf. My heart felt like it was trying to crawl up my throat. I knew what I saw. There was no mistaking it. The man hadn't moved, and yet everything about him screamed tension, like he was waiting for something, or someone. My first instinct was to rationalize. Maybe it was a coworker I hadn't been told about. Maybe someone from corporate doing a late-night check-in. But I knew every person on the schedule. I had the login screen in front of me 2 hours ago, and no one had badged in since 9. That left one conclusion. He was here illegally. My legs started to go numb from crouching, but I didn't dare move. My mind flicked through possibilities. Hide, confront, escape. Then I remembered. I'd seen that hoodie before. Earlier that night, around 9:10 p.m., I'd glanced at the security feed. Just routine, boredom mostly. I remembered a man in that same hoodie browsing the frozen food section. I didn't think anything of it then, but now everything lined up. There was no purchase logged in the register. No record of the door opening after 10. Had he stayed inside? Hidden somewhere during lockup? I slowly backed away, keeping my flashlight low. Every step I took made the air around me colder. I didn't breathe until I reached the fire exit in the back, pushed it open, and ran. The alarm was deafening. I didn't stop running until I reached the gas station across the road. The clerk must have thought I was on something. I looked half frozen, half crazed, wearing a hoodie, no coat, still holding my flashlight like a weapon. "I need your phone," I gasped. He handed it over without a word. I called 911, told them someone was inside the store. Maybe dangerous, maybe armed. By the time the police arrived, I was shivering so badly I couldn't form full sentences. They made me sit inside the cruiser while they searched the store. 12 minutes later, they brought him out. He was quiet, didn't resist, just stared at the snow falling like he hadn't seen it in years. They found him behind the customer service desk. In his backpack, a family dollar tablet, a handwritten notebook full of numbers, and a box cutter. Later, I heard he was a former employee, fired months ago for stealing electronics. But somehow his access card was never deactivated. That detail still chills me. He hadn't broken in. He had walked in like he belonged. The officers told me he claimed he wasn't there to hurt anyone, said he was just there for his files. That's what he told them, his files. When asked about the box cutter, he didn't answer. Later, reviewing the camera footage with the store manager and the responding officer, we saw the moment he entered. He scanned his card at 8:57 p.m., walked in calmly, didn't wave, didn't glance around nervously. He just disappeared from view near the stockroom hallway. There was no camera angle showing where he went after that. Just a blind spot between two aisles, one I'd walked past twice that night. I thought about all the moments I'd felt watched during that shift, all the odd chills, the silence that felt just a little too still. I didn't sleep that day, or the next. I kept seeing that image of him in the hoodie, standing at the end of the aisle, face tilted down, like he was waiting for someone to find him. Maybe me. I took a leave of absence the following week. Told them I needed time to process, and that was true. But the deeper truth was, I couldn't walk back into that building. Not yet. Maybe not ever. It wasn't just the intruder, or the fact that he'd been there all night without anyone knowing. It was something I couldn't explain, something that crawled under my skin every time I thought about it. The night manager called me a few days later, said they'd finally gone through the notebook found in his bag. Most of it was scribbled nonsense, rows of numbers, inventory codes, and fragments of phrases, but a few lines were clear. The scanner lies. They don't track what matters. He never noticed me, not once. I didn't know what that meant, but the manager said something else, something worse. "Noah, your name was written on one of the pages." I asked him to repeat it. Just your name, first name, and the date, December 9th. That's it. Like it was a meeting time. I don't remember hanging up. I just sat there in my apartment for what felt like an hour, staring at my own hands like I didn't trust them. Had he planned something for me? Had he meant to confront me? Hurt me? Or was I just the unlucky one who happened to be working that night? I went back through my own notes, the logs I'd printed, the reports I submitted. Nothing was out of place. All numbers matched. But I kept wondering, what if he'd been there on more than one occasion? What if he'd been testing something, watching the store, watching me. There was no proof, but I couldn't shake the idea that this wasn't random. The box cutter, the files, my name. You don't write someone's name down before breaking into their workplace unless you're planning something personal. That idea settled like cement in my chest. It's been over a year since the audit. I've moved on in most visible ways. Left Rochester, took a quieter job at a logistics hub in Albany. Days only. No more night shifts, no more empty aisles or locked doors behind me. My therapist says that's good. Control your environment, she tells me. Reduce the triggers. But even now, I flinch when I hear the beep of a scanner. I double-check my doors before bed, and I haven't used the same ringtone alarm since that night. Sometimes I wonder what he meant. He never noticed me. Had I ignored him back when he worked there? Was he invisible the way I often tried to be? We were probably alike in some ways. Loners, quiet types, people who preferred the hum of machines over the noise of other people. Maybe I saw too much of myself in him, and that's why it bothers me. Or maybe he was just broken in a way I could never understand. People think scary things wear masks or hide in the shadows. But sometimes, the scariest thing is when someone walks into your life through a door they were never supposed to have access to, and they know your name. There's one more thing I never told anyone. After the police took him away, I returned to grab my backpack from the office. My phone had been recovered. It was in the backpack, zipped inside a pocket I never use. I didn't put it there. But what chilled me most wasn't the location. It was what was on the screen. The alarm I'd set for 1:30 a.m. It had been snoozed, not dismissed, snoozed. Someone had picked it up, unlocked it, and chosen to let the alarm ring again 10 minutes later, like they wanted me to come find it. That night I realized something. Not all intruders are there to steal. Some just want to be seen, but they choose how and when. Attention is a form of power, and neglect can be just as dangerous as confrontation. In the quiet corners of our lives, what we ignore may be quietly preparing to remind us it exists. Stay aware, stay human,